Welcome one and all to this Abodo CPT series. You're very welcome here. My name is DK and I'm based in Wellington, New Zealand, although I do have a Welsh accent if you were trying to pin it. So I'm originally from the valleys of South Wales, but I'm over here in New Zealand along with the crew here who I'll introduce in due course. And we have an interesting CPD series coming to you from the Abodo people who are building a community of architects, designers, construction professionals, those interested in stored carbon, circularity, sustainability, interested in wood and everything around looking after the planet. So we're very welcome here. We got three speakers or three presenters here today, two of which will be available for Q&A. And this webinar series is also going to take up part of your CPT accredited services as well. So if I can just glance down this and make sure I get this right, the CPT talks by Abodo are RIBA approved through their CPT partner Teulo, and Teulo is who's bringing it in association with Abodo today, their provider of architectural design and technology related educational content direct to you. So together with Abodo, and this webinar series is, as I said, RIBA approved. So that means that this session adheres to the ARB core competency, environmental sustainability. That's a mouthful. I always got to read that because I can't remember that. You will be emailed a certificate at the end of this session, which obviously you can use towards your CPT points going forward. Before I introduce the speakers and get into the content, let's do a little bit of digital housekeeping. The boring stuff, but still needed in terms of what we got going here today. We're using, because we're online, there's over 250 of you signed up for today, by the way. We're using something called Livestorm. If you've used this before, just carry on, you know the drill. There's a chat section on the right-hand side, and there's also a question tab where you can curate and offer up your insights and questions, and also any links or quotes that you want to pull out from who you're listening to here today. You can also upvote any questions. And like I said, two of the three speakers here today are available for Q&A, and we'll let you know who those are, obviously. If there's any technical difficulties, do the classic refresh. If you're on Chrome and Firefox, we know the Livestorm is quite stable on there. If you're using another browser, and it's working for you, that's fine. If it's not, maybe open up Firefox or Chrome and give it another go there. There's an email there that you can email direct Janelle, or Jay as we know. You can direct her if there's any other difficulties. And also Jay is here as a representative, of Abodo. So if you've got any questions around the Abodo products and what they offer into the world, which is amazing stuff, please hit her up for any materials or hook up a meeting and a chat and any further details that you want from them. So I think in terms of that, the only other thing to say is we also got Harley with us. You won't see him, but he makes all the magic happen. He's our production guy up in Auckland. So this is a New Zealand affair. And Jay is also up north in North Island as well, north of Auckland again. So we're coming to you from the other side of the planet, but we've also got some speakers also coming to you from the other side of the planet. And our first two speakers are coming to you from Australia. And before I introduce them, there's a couple of things to say. One is, during Stefan's presentation, we have Melanie and Stefan, but during Stefan's presentation, he will ask you a question because we have a bit of a prize giveaway. Make sure that you're paying attention. There's a lovely prize to be given away, and that is this beautiful book, Building with Wood. And it's the classic first come, first serve. First to answer in the chat room the question that Stefan's going to ask, and Jay will be over there, and I will announce the winner then at the end of their presentations. But that will hopefully ignite some interest and focus. Grab your favorite beverage, your favorite notebook. The idea is to extract as much wisdom and insights as possible from our speakers here today, and use, again, the community to pull out quotes, pull out ideas, and pull out any questions that you have burning so that we can ask both Melanie and Stefan, who are first two speakers up, questions. We will have a Q&A for the first two presenters. They are a duo. They'll be presenting together, coming to us from Australia. I'm just going to check that we can hear them and they can hear us. So it's good evening to you, Melanie and Stefan.
Good evening, DK.
Hey, DK.
Brilliant. We can hear you fine, so let me give you a proper introduction this time and set up the digital stage for this Obodo CPD series. So as you hear there, we got Melanie and Stefan. It's a duo. And first up is Melanie. She is the CEO of FSC Australia and New Zealand for the past 2.5 years. She came to the organization with an extensive corporate leadership experience spanning not-for-profit organizations, government and for-profit organizations in the health and renewable energy sector. In her role as CEO, Melanie is responsible for driving FSC's ANZ's strategic direction, strengthening stakeholder relationships, and advancing the FSC's mission in the region. After Melanie's presentation, we'll also have Stefan. And sustainable forestry has been at the core of Stefan's work throughout his career. His experience spans researching community forestry in East Africa, supporting indigenous communities in Central America with FSC certified sustainable forestry, and advocating for sustainability requirements in the public and private procurement in Denmark. A former deputy chair of the FSC in Denmark, Stefan has been with the FSC ANZ for over 5 years. As the organization's senior policy manager, he is responsible for ensuring the organization's forest management standards in Australia and New Zealand, and ensuring that they continue to maintain relevance and impact. He has also contributed to the development of timber legality legislation in the EU, Australia, and New Zealand, and has extensive experience with the FSC's integrity work worldwide. Stefan will be up after Melanie. So, Melanie, the digital stage is all yours.
Well, thank you, DK, and thank you so much for attending. So I sit here on the other side of the world and we ponder the question, what if we designed and constructed buildings with the materials that we can actually verify to have a positive impact, both environmentally, socially, and also economically to the communities. And we know by using FFC certified materials, being the most trusted and recognised forest certification scheme in the world, we can do just that. And so my goal tonight, and Stefan's as well, and he'll delve into the bit more detail of it, is certainly to increase your knowledge of what the Forest Stewardship Council is, how we originated, and then we'll go into issues such as procurement, and Stefan then delves a little bit deeper into illegality and a whole range of the framework associated there. I do want to acknowledge before we start as well Obodo Wood and thank them very much for the opportunity. They're very much a highly valued certificate holder, and they really do set the bar high for FFC, and we're delighted to have them as part of the FFC family. As I said, I'm sitting in Australia, and it's quite a different context sometimes. And I do want to start, however, by our acknowledgement of country, and that is really acknowledging the traditional owners of our land. And the Forest Stewardship acknowledges the traditional owners of our country throughout Australia and recognises the continuing connection to lands, waters and communities. We pay our respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island cultures and to their elders past and present. And FFC is often seen as an environmental-based organisation on the outside, but we have the core social aspects very dear to our hearts, and particularly in Australia and New Zealand and other areas of the world with strong Indigenous cultures, we certainly pay our respect, and they're absolutely critical to the part of the system. And I'll delve a little bit more into that as the presentation goes on. FFC is 30 years young, 31 I think actually coming up this year, and we are an international non-profit organisation founded in 1993 as a global response to deforestation. And it was after the Rio Earth Summit, and I still remember the Rio Earth Summit very, very clearly, and the great ambitions that many people went in, particularly to save the Amazon at that stage and work out how do we actually protect those forests that we're losing before our very eyes. And there was a huge response to that, and there was obviously a lot of work in relation to boycotting of tropical timbers and boycotting material that was actually coming from the Amazon. But essentially that drove the trade underground, and it was quickly realised that boycotting wasn't going to be the answer to saving the world's forest. And so quite a group of disillusioned people got together as a result of that Rio Earth Summit and decided to establish a certification system for responsible forest management. So how do we actually use our forests sustainably, that they are there for the future? And FFC was born out of, a group of extremely passionate people coming from different realms of life, and began the creation of FFC. And it's fascinating, that the setting of FFC still stands today on how it was originally set up, even though we continue to grow and grow, which is really wonderful. I'm going to jump first to a video. I can talk a lot about what is FFC. I went through my PowerPoint today again and just went, oh gosh, this is much better summed up, not looking at a slide, but actually looking at real pictures of what FFC is. And I think this short video just summarises exactly what we're about. So I think I'm handing over to Harley, who's going to get that video to play for me. Thank you. I just think those pictures, the visuals can sum it much better up than I can in words. So I think that gives an overall context of why we do what we do, and the importance of FFC as a forest certification system. Just very quickly, and I know that you know this information, but I'll quickly go through it. And we very much know why our forests are important to us, as they sustain the very life on Earth. And we know that 31% of our Earth land area is comprised of forest, and 80% of our world's terrestrial species are supported by those forests. Probably a little bit we don't often have figures or an understanding of is 1.6 billion people's livelihoods are supported by the forests in many, many different ways. And we also know that the forests protect our soils and provide our fresh water and regulate and stabilise our climate. So critically important that they must be protected, but they also provide a wonderful resource for us to use as well. Certainly, a lot of the data that's been coming out lately supports that without healthy and resilient forests, we will lose this fight against the climate and biodiversity crisis that we're currently faced with in our world. So what is the Forest Stewardship Council? And this is just giving us some figures around about what we do. 30 years in operation is FFC today. We have around about 150 plus million certified hectares of forested area throughout the globe. We've actually reduced slightly to where we were, and due to the conflict and the issues within Belarus and Russia, FFC certification has been withdrawn from those areas. We have around about 1,200 individuals and organisations making up our governing body, so we're very much a member-driven organisation. We have 85 locally adapted forest stewardship standards throughout the world, so we still have our key principles, but we are actually able to locally adapt those forest stewardship standards to the local conditions and environment. 46% of consumers globally recognise the FFC logo. We have 1,700 companies licensed to promote the FFC labelled products, over 60,000 organisations or certifications that verify sustainable sourcing. So that's our chain of custody certificate holders. And I know that grows every day. It's becoming more and more relevant into the world in which we trade. And we are the #1 most recognised, trusted and rigorous forest certification system in the globe. A few figures for the UK region. 30 years in operation, and this was a bit of a learning for myself. And the UK office was actually the first local network partner office as well within the FFC system. Within the United Kingdom, there's 1.6 million hectares of certified forests. There's 34 individuals and organisations making up the governing body. They have one locally adapted forest stewardship standard. Incredibly, and much to the envy of the rest of the world, I spoke about 46% of consumers globally recognise this, and I haven't quite changed that slide appropriately just by looking at that, but 72% of consumers within the UK recognise the FFC logo, and that's greater than anywhere else in the world. In the UK, there's 128 companies licensed to promote FFC labelled products. There's over 2,257 certifications that verify sustainable sourcing, and once again, the most recognised, trusted and rigorous forest certification system. Our mission is quite simple: to help protect healthy and resilient forests for all and forever. Importantly, we're also trusted by NGOs, consumers and businesses, and this is a slide just to recognise the partners that play part of the role in FFC with us. NGOs are particularly important for us. WWF is a critical partner, the Rainforest Alliance, Sierra Club and Borneo Initiative, and that's just some of the world's most trusted environmental organisations that are FFC members. And businesses, we have incredible amount of very, very high profile, but also small businesses and global brands that choose to partner with us in what we actually do. And I know certainly within Australia that's really growing as those businesses align to the values of FFC and wish to partner and use our logos and our certification system to verify their sustainability outcomes. As I said earlier, FFC is a complicated beast, but within that complicated beast is a system of high integrity and trust. And we are built on democracy and equality. And we pioneered this, at sometimes awkward system of multi-stakeholder governance system. And that gives equal weight to the economic, the environmental and social perspective. And so we have a 3-chamber system. And there's often what we call a level of tension within our system. But what we find with that is we actually get the very best negotiated outcomes. And so, it's incredibly important that negotiated outcomes are reached, and that is that they actually also have benefits environmentally, socially, and economically. So sometimes it's quite a challenging system, but as I said, with that challenge of the system comes a unique and incredibly robust system with high integrity. We're fundamentally balanced between our chambers, so no chamber can outvote the other chamber, so 33.3% to every chamber. And so you actually need to be an expert or a very, very good negotiator in our system to actually bring those parties together and ensure that a balanced approach is provided. We're a member-based organisation, and our members drive our vision, and they also drive the changes that we actually see within our system. We have an international board, and then at a local level throughout the world, as in Australia and New Zealand or the UK office, they have their own individual board that actually set the priority for the country. So we have an international priority set, and then we have them also at a national level. But once again, the members are fundamental to that work. I'm going to quickly, I'm very aware of the time, I'm just going to quickly go through these slides, but the forest stewardship is about responsible sourcing, that we verify our supply chains. We work within the conservation area to maintain and enhance the forest values, and we also do restoration within our forest areas as well. So we convene stakeholders and set policies to accelerate forest recovery. From forest to consumers, we have sometimes a long value chain, but we have a forest management system that obviously works at the forest level. Then we have certification of chain of custody, which is through the sawmill, factory and the processing, so that every step within that process that we can actually verify. We also have project certification at the end. Once a product goes to a retailer now, the famous wooden spoon, I think, in the Forest Stewardship Council is often put up as being the first FFC certified product that come out. But as a retailer, if you're wanting to promote the sale of that wooden spoon, then you have a promotional license holder to use our logo appropriately. And we are now continuing to evolve and mature, and we have voluntary add-ons to that area, and we have what we call verified impact, which is our ecosystem services for our forest managers and businesses. And Stefan will actually talk also a little bit about EUDR and FFC being aligned for EUDR, and no doubt you're hearing a lot about EUDR at the moment. I'm just going to keep skipping. As I said earlier, we have nationally adapted standards, but we still have the 10 FFC key principles that cannot be changed. And so they are in every standard and are of utmost importance on the way and how we actually manage our forests. And once again, you see within there areas that are appropriate for environmental outcomes, but very much also social outcomes as well. And once again, of going back to my acknowledgement of country, one of the key principles of the FFC system is the upholding the rights of Indigenous peoples, and we're growing more and more and realising the value in that area. The FFC certification system, as the CEO of FFC Australia and New Zealand, I'm very much the generalist in the area, and I'll talk very generally, and Stefan will delve a little bit more into this, I believe, or talk a little bit more in depth as a specialist in this area. But we have the main actors within our system. There's obviously ourselves. We have ASI, or the Assurance Services International, and that provides oversight of the certification bodies. So essentially I refer to ASI as the auditor of the auditors. We have our certification bodies, who are independent organisations accredited to issue and manage FFC certificates. We have ISIL, as well as the Global Association for Social and Environment Sustainability Systems, and we are the only forest certification system that is ISIL code compliant. And obviously our certificate holders, organisations that have received FSC certifications such as Abodo, are also in that main ACTA system. As I said, quite a complicated and convoluted system that provides the integrity, but therefore the trust within the system. And I'm going to go, better than hearing my voice, once again, a short video on understanding how the FSC certification system works. Thank you.
It's never been more important to make sure our forests are managed sustainably and responsibly. But how can you tell if a forest really is being properly cared for? One way is to look out for an FSC certificate. It's a label that's trusted by businesses, customers. It's been more important to make sure our healthy and resilient forests for all, forever. That's because, like forests themselves, the FSC certification process is made up of an interconnected ecosystem of different actors. And each actor plays a unique role in maintaining trust in the overall outcome. Let's take a closer look at those actors, starting with FSC itself. FSC develops the standards for responsible forestry, and these standards protect over 150 million hectares of certified forests. FSC collaborates with relevant stakeholders to make sure the standards reflect three key areas: environmental, economic, and social. Next are the certification bodies. Certification bodies handle everything from initial evaluations to issuing the certificates themselves and conducting the required annual audits to ensure that certificate holders conform with FSC's standards. Assurance Services International, or ASI, provides oversight to these certification bodies. ASI independently checks each certification body tasked with auditing certificate holders. So ASI makes sure that auditing is always done by the book. There's one last piece of the puzzle. That's the ISIL Alliance, the global membership body for maintaining credible sustainability standards. Both FSC and ASI conform with the ISIL code. In fact, FSC is the only forest certification system in the world that ticks the ISIL box. All this means that FSC's standards set the requirements for responsible forestry and the certification process. Certification bodies conduct the evaluations that ensure requirements are adhered to. ASI adds additional assurance through its oversight of those certification bodies. Put it all together and it shows how much thought and care goes into protecting the credibility of this process. Which is why, when you see the FSC Check Tree label, you can be confident it's the gold standard of green standards. To find out more, visit fsc.org.
Thank you. And finally, why choose FFC? Recent studies and continuing consumer research studies are showing us that 66% of people expect companies not to contribute to deforestation. And 74% of certificate holders agree that FFC helps them communicate their corporate social responsibility and initiatives. 83% of our certificate holders agree FFC certification helps create a positive corporate image. And 6 out of 10 consumers feel that the claim should be independently verified. So we are a small label on many, many products, but we are actually having a big impact. We have a big impact by safeguarding those ancient and endangered forests. FFC prevents deforestation and degradation. We conserve biodiversity, we ensure fair wages and safe work environments, and uphold Indigenous and community rights. So there's a lot packed into that label that you see on products. A difficult slide to read, but as I think I've demonstrated throughout the presentation, we are the most trusted for our certification system, backed by some of the largest NGOs in the world. Our business reach is extensive and our brands trust us, and we are the most recognised mark for responsible forestry. As we said, we protect biodiversity, we champion the rights of Indigenous people, we offer strong protection for workers, and we are a proven solution to tackle the issues associated with climate change. Our criteria, well, our FFC claims meet very, very strict criteria, and through our system, we also don't allow bad actors within our system. FFC also supports sustainable development goals and supporting 14 of the 17 SDGs provided by the UN. And 80% of the consumers who recognise the FFC trust a brand carrying the FFC logo. So 4 out of 5 consumers who recognise us are likely to trust a brand or trust that product if the FFC label is actually present. And finally, with all of that, we've got a wonderful example that is local within the UK of a FFC project certification, and why Canary Wharf Group went for project certification and trusted the FFC brand. And I'm going to finish on this video. Thank you.
We've worked out that in the last sort of 10 years we've used about 18,000 metres cubed of timber, all of which is FSC certified. And having something like FSC project certification, it puts the framework in place to literally guarantee that you're getting responsibly sourced timber on your projects. But the timber that we use in the project ranges from anything from this little pipe block that we have here, which is used for supporting the pipes in the M&E installation, right through to the timbers that you do see, like the roof structure here at Crossrail. We know we've got assurance that all the way through the supply chain, the right thing is being done, both socially, environmentally and economically. But we're also getting the benefit of a compliant SDG supply chain as well. FSC means that you can prove that it's responsibly sourced.
Hi everyone. Thanks Melanie, and I'll try and pick up from here. Thanks for this opportunity, Abodo, and for everyone dialing in. We can't see how many is attending, but I hope there's still a few left. I've got the ungrateful job of now talking about the more technical and some would probably almost say boring stuff about timber legality and integrity work and deforestation and so on. But I'll try to spice it up a little bit. I should just start off by sending regards from the FSC UK team. We have a really talented and a great team in the UK, based in Wales. Unfortunately, they weren't able to join today, so we kindly agreed to step in and present on their behalf. But if you have any questions about FSC or sourcing FSC or anything, they are definitely available. You can just go to their webpage, search for FSC UK, and you'll be able to get in touch with them. You're obviously also more than welcome to reach out to Mel and I, but if it's UK specific queries, the UK team is probably better suited to assist you. But yeah, back to the presentation, coming to you here from a not particularly glamorous hotel room in Melbourne. I'm on the road at the moment, and cheap hotel room seems to be life in a not-for-profit organization, but I won't complain too much. You've already had an introduction of who I am and what I've done and focused on in my career, but it has really been around forestry since I graduated from university, often with a focus on sustainable forestry and legality. So I feel like I'm relatively suited to provide this presentation. I'm from Denmark originally, so I have a good understanding of forestry issues in Europe, not particularly well versed across the UK, but have a pretty good understanding, and especially when it comes to timber legality legislation, which is fairly similar across jurisdictions. I've probably been in this sustainable forestry space for 12, 14 years, and I've definitely noticed throughout my time a shift when it comes to the construction industry and architects and the use of timber products. There seems to have been a bit of a reckoning and a realization that we do need to change to more sustainable building products and practices. Wood is one of those key solutions when it comes to resolving some of the sustainability issues the construction industry is facing. Unfortunately, simply just choosing wood as a building material is no guarantee that you actually have a sustainable resource. You do need to do more than that, which is what I'll be focusing on today, and why I'm very excited to be here to present for you. Just a brief agenda. I'll talk a little bit first about the consequences of illegal and legal logging globally. Then we'll delve into the UK's illegal logging legislation, the UKTR. Then Melanie's already touched upon this, but I'll go a little bit more into detail about why you should choose to combine legality legislation with FSC certification, basically demonstrating that legality is good, but it's not the full answer. You do need to build on top of legality with sustainability. Then we'll talk a little bit about FSC's integrity work. This is one of our key focus areas. And then at the end, I'll show you how you can find and verify FSC certified suppliers. That's usually where like building like specifiers and architects and builders have good intentions, but they usually often fall short when it comes to either finding suppliers or ensuring that the products they receive are actually genuinely FSC certified. So FSC is working pretty hard to make it as easy as possible for you guys to use certified products. As mentioned, there's a little quiz at the end, so I guess you're forced to listen relatively carefully if you're interested in that book. But yeah, without further ado, I shall jump into it. I just put up a few facts about the consequences of illegal logging, which are quite mind-boggling. Many will be surprised to hear that illegal logging is the world's third biggest illegal trade after counterfeiting and drug trafficking, coming in third before human trafficking and illegal mining. So it is a very big industry, illegal logging, unfortunately, amounting to around 120 billion pounds annually. So there's some well-resourced players in this field. It's not just small players. It's organized crime at a global scale. The European market, EU and UK are definitely not immune to this. Pre-Brexit, the WWF estimated that up towards 19% of the products entering the EU market were from illegal sources, and that illegal logging was tied to up towards 30% of timber production. Incredibly, some countries, the harvesting that occurs, illegal logging accounts for up to 90% of that. So by far dominated by illegal logging. I don't want to completely leave you disillusioned here. We are turning the tide when it comes to illegal logging, and the numbers are in decline. We're clearing less and less forest, but we're still clearing a significant chunk of forest, as you'll see on the next slide. This combines legal and illegal logging, and I'll talk a little bit about why I think that's so important to make a distinction here, but also realize the shortcomings of some of this. But just a bit more shock therapy before we get into it. Over the last decade, we lost 46 million hectares of harvest of forest, almost twice the size of the UK, due to deforestation. That's legal and illegal deforestation. So one of the points I want to make in this presentation is that illegal logging is bad. legal logging is good, but it's by no way any kind of assurance of sustainability. Unfortunately, you can legally harvest and clear forests across the world, and simply relying on legality doesn't give you any kind of assurance of sustainability. So just going on to I guess hammer home that point about legal logging, because we'll be talking about the legal logging legislation in a little bit. Here we have a forest of a picture of a cleared forest in Indonesia, carbon-rich peatland that was cleared by a big company, converted, and the wood from the forest was pulped and turned into paper and toilet paper, and a lot of that would likely be heading for European markets, UK as well. So this is just to say, like, this is legal logging, and even though we have really good illegal logging legislation in place, it doesn't mean that you can trust that the products you purchase are not from something like what we're seeing on the pictures. And the consequences are very real of this. Increased gas house emission. I mentioned this was really carbon-rich peatland, so there's been a lot of emissions from that. Disruption of water cycles. Forests do help regulate the climate, increase soil erosion. Forests are a lot better at holding down and packing down soil compared to crops or bare land like we see here. And then, as Melanie mentioned, there's billions of people across the world that rely on forests for their livelihoods. So this really destroys and disrupts livelihoods. And just a few photos. Here's a photo of that forest before it was cleared, of an orangutan nest. So legally cleared, but still you're clearing habitats of a threatened species like the orangutan. Often the social ramifications of this kind of forest clearing are overlooked, but here we see the local indigenous people protesting and trying to block heavy machinery with a ritual space that they put up. Unfortunately, they lost that fight and lost the forest, their traditional forest, that so much of their culture and traditional knowledge is tied to. And to some degree become homeless and displaced in the world. So what I'm trying to say here is that legal logging is not necessarily something you should rely on when you're sourcing timber. It's certainly a good step to at least have legal harvest, but I think your clients and consumers and others who are using the products and buildings that you construct would probably be disappointed to learn that some of their products were from forests like these. The knee-jerk reaction by many people, as Melanie also alluded to, is to say, well, let's not source from tropical countries and rely on domestic supply. Two problems here is that we also have domestic supply issues in many Western countries. So there's also issues related to forestry in European countries. So simply ignoring tropical timber species is not necessarily the solution there. You'll just drive deforestation or other forestry issues in other jurisdictions. And more importantly, you're taking incentives away for sustainable forestry in the tropics if you don't source timber materials from the tropics. So you have millions of smallholders across the world who rely on forests for their livelihood, so they harvest them sustainably, sell them to Western markets. If Western markets stop sourcing those products, there's no incentive for maintaining the standing forest, and it'll most likely be converted into farmland or for running cattle. So that I don't think there's any scenario where it's a particularly good solution to be boycotting and not importing timber from the tropics. It's a fantastic building material, and it can also have really positive impacts in the tropics, which is why more and more people are turning towards FSC as part of their due diligence to ensure that they keep sourcing timber from overseas and tropical countries while ensuring that they're not becoming a part of the problem we've seen in the last few slides. I'll talk a little bit more about FSC in a minute, but let's talk illegality or illegal logging legislation. first. So governments across the world are increasingly putting legislation in place to curb import of illegally logged products. The EU zone was the first mover in this place in 2013, then put in place the EU timber regulation. And then we had a suite of countries that followed suit not long after, including Australia, South Korea, Japan, the US, and soon New Zealand as well. The UK was part of the EU's EUTR until Brexit, where the EUTR, so the EU's illegal logging legislation, stopped being applicable in Great Britain, and instead it was replaced by the UK TR, which is basically a carbon copy of the EUTR. So it's still EU regulation, but it's just not enforced by the EU, but rather by the UK government. And it does have a fair bit of teeth, this regulation. The penalties include fairly significant fines and, worst case, up to 24 months in jail for importing deliberately illegally logged products. It would have to be some pretty serious quantities and over a fair bit of time to get prison sentences, but it is an opportunity under the legislation. What I'm talking about going forward applies to all countries you import from, apart from Indonesia. There's a little quirk in the EUTR and UKTR called voluntary partnership agreements, where a country like Indonesia builds its own government-owned certification scheme, and if you can demonstrate that your product is produced in compliance with this scheme, it'll lessen the due diligence burden. So the UK has only entered into an agreement with Indonesia, so that changes the requirements a little bit. So just be mindful that what I'm talking about in this slide here applies to all other countries but Indonesia. So a bit of a UKTR crash course. It prohibits the placing of illegally harvested timber and timber products on the UK market. That's kind of in the name. And illegally harvested timber is basically just timber that's harvested in contravention of the applicable legislation in the country of harvest. And that's important to keep in mind. It's not UK timber harvesting legislation or anything. It needs to be in compliance with the local legislation. So if the local legislation says that you can harvest all forest in this country, then that's fine. You can enter all of that product into the UK market. So it depends on the rigor of the legislation in the country to how high a standard the product is harvested to. So the timber regulation requires operators, so those first placing timber products on the market, to exercise due diligence. I'll talk about due diligence in the next slide. And then a little bit of a specific quirk to the UKTR is that traders, so those who sell products after it's been placed on the market, must be able to identify the operators or the traders who supply the timber and timber products. So Australia's timber legality legislation, the requirements start and stop with the importing processor, so whoever brought it into the country. Once they sell it to someone else in the supply chain, there's no requirements downstream to keep track of where the timber comes from. But in the UK, people in the supply chain will need to keep track of the supply chain from being placed on the UK market to whatever link in the supply chain. UKTR due diligence is very similar to due diligence in all other timber legality legislation. It basically consists of three components. First, you gather information about the timber you're importing. That includes the species, the quantity, the supplier, the country of harvest, and the compliance with applicable legislation. So that's the information you need to be able to assess the risk of that timber you're intending to import being harvested illegally. So you gather your information, you analyze it, and you come to a risk assessment. If the risk is negligible, then fine. If it's non-negligible, then you need to mitigate the risk. So if you identify there's no risk, you can go ahead and import. And it's important to remember, you have to do all of this before you start importing. It's not once it's on shore, it's before it reaches UK shores, you do this due diligence. So if there's no risk, you can go ahead and import. You just need to document all of these due diligence steps. If you do identify risk of illegality, so for instance, you see that it's from a war zone in Ukraine, or it's from Myanmar or somewhere else, a deforestation hotspot like Brazil under Bolsonaro or something, then you have to mitigate this risk. And if you're unable to mitigate the risk and confidently reach the conclusion that the timber you're intending to import is legally harvested, you're not allowed to import it. So that's the three parts of the due diligence system: gather information, assess the risk based on this information, and then if you identify risk, you mitigate that risk, or if you can't mitigate it, you don't import the product. So when the EUTR in 2013 was established, there was a long discussion back and forth about the role of FSC certification. In timber legality legislation, there's one camp lobbying for what we call a green lane or deemed to comply arrangement, basically saying because FSC has legality at the core of everything we do, that's our starting point, and we build sustainability on top of it, then FSC should just be considered a green lane. And there's another camp who ended up winning the discussion, saying, well, that might be right, but governments like the UK's government shouldn't be outsourcing enforcement of legislation to a private certification organization like FSC. It should be enforcing its own legislation. So that became the end of the argument, but there was still a recognition that certification by FSC is a pretty good assurance of legality because of our legality requirements. So it didn't become a green lane, but maybe a little bit more of an orange lane. So there's a whole heap of benefits of importing FSC certified products when it comes to the due diligence and compliance with the illegal logging legislation. So in effect, it lessens the due diligence burden. And FSC certification or importing FSC certified products also help importers to gather the relevant information that I mentioned on the previous slides about species and location of harvest. And then finally, in our chain of custody standard, there's a requirement that FSC certificate holders have to provide the information required in timber legality legislation. So in FSC, you have a mechanism. So if you're sourcing from an FSC certified organization somewhere across the world, you can basically go to them and say, to meet the UKTR, I need this, and this information. And FSC, under FSC certification, they're compelled to provide this information to you. So it makes your due diligence work a lot easier because you can, in effect, force your suppliers to provide the information you need to meet the due diligence requirements. So back to FSC, I hope that makes sense about the UKTI. It was a very condensed version of complex legislation, and I'm definitely not a lawyer or anything like that, but that was a pretty good crash course, I think, in what the UKTR is. So we've seen that UK and other jurisdictions have like best practice timber legality legislation in place. So the question is, why do you even need FSC certification if you know your products are legal? And hopefully you'll be thinking of my first few slides here showing that legality isn't in any way, shape, or form an assurance of sustainability. Importantly, you also get an assurance that these products are not only legal when you source FSC, but also coming from economically, environmentally, and socially sustainable forestry operations. You've seen this slide already. I might just delve into a little bit more detail about the different requirements we have. I won't go through all 10 principles in our forest management standard. So you can consider these headlines, and then there's further requirements underneath that hammer out the details of each principle. But just to name a few, we have Principle 2 regarding workers' rights, which ensures the that forests are a safe place to work, and that fair wages are being paid, and there's no bonded labor, there's the right to unionize, and there's no discrimination between female and male employees, or between domestic and migrant workers, and so on. So this and the two next principles are really where you see the social flavor in FSC certification shine through. People all tend to think about FSC as just an environmental standard, but there's a huge social component too, just as there's an economic component too. There's requirements around economic viability and sustainability in our standards as well. Principle 3 is about indigenous peoples. That's not relevant in the UK for obvious reasons, but it is in many other jurisdictions that you would be sourcing from. So this ensures the rights of indigenous peoples. So they have the right to free, prior, informed consent. So if someone's harvesting indigenous people's forests, they have the right to withhold their consent to harvesting. And the forest manager needs to give them an informed opportunity to make an informed decision freely about whether or not they want to have a third-party forest manager harvest their forest. And there's protection of cultural sites and so on. So a really holistic protection of indigenous people's rights. They are to a large degree mirrored in Principle 4, which has to do with the requirements for protection of the rights of local communities living adjacent to FSC certified forests. Then our main environmental requirements are in Principle 6 and 9, which have to do with the protection of habitats for rare, threatened, and endangered species, protection of waterways, and so on, and then the protection of what we call high conservation values. So those the most valuable values in a forest have special rights in FSC certified forests and will have to be protected from forestry activities. They have to be maintained, which basically means protected. So that's really the standard in a nutshell. There's around 300 and something individual requirements that are being audited at the forest management level. So it's a pretty comprehensive standard. A full forest management audit can take between a week and I think in really, really large forests, I think I've heard of something like 3 weeks to audit against the whole standard. So it's a pretty comprehensive auditing process by an independent third-party auditor. You're probably getting a little bit sick of hearing me talk. I promise I have a video after this slide, so I can have a sip of water and you can rest your ears. But just a little bit about the positive impacts, which Melanie has already touched upon just a little bit. But just to say that FSC isn't just about maintaining status quo, rather than seeing the negative impacts of illegal logging. We want to see positive impacts of FSC certified forestry. So forest health in many instances improving, and holistically seeing people affected by forestry having positive experiences from forestry. So FSC hasn't been the best at demonstrating our positive impacts. It's something we're increasingly focusing on, and it's also something academia is increasingly focused on. So we see more and more research trying to document whether or not FSC actually has a positive impact at the forest floor. And just to highlight a few, on the left here, there's a comparison, so a meta-analysis of different studies of certification schemes, finding that FSC by far provides the best protection of indigenous people's rights. In the bottom right, there's a study from 2023 from FSC certified forests in Canada and the US showing that they store more carbon when compared to non-certified forests with common practices. So basically your kind of status quo forest management in the UK, US and Canada didn't have the same amount of stored carbon compared to FSC certified forests. And then very excitingly, last year we had a study from the University of Utrecht in the Netherlands showing some really, really positive impacts of FSC certified forestry in the Congo Basin. So if Harley's still awake, can you please play the video?
We zitten dus tussen een gorilla familie en een olifant in. Dit is echt te gek.
I'm Yuri Zwerts. I'm an assistant professor at Utrecht University and I'm a wildlife biologist. I studied wildlife in the tropical forest of Central Africa for 5 years and I discovered that FSC certified forestry effectively protects wildlife in these forests. Tropical forest, of course, hyper diverse. They have over 62% of all the vertebrate species. A lot of these species populations are going down, so it's important to protect them. We have a growing human population and we will need more resources and we have to produce those resources sustainably. There are certified production systems like FSC and they say that they have a positive impact on the environment and on people. I always wondered, like, does that really have an impact? I wasn't the only one. Also WWF wondered whether FSC has the impact that they claim to have. And together with Jaap van der Wade from WWF, I developed a research proposal to investigate whether FSC certified forestry really has an impact. We were the first study to really convincingly show that FSC certified forestry effectively protects wildlife in tropical forest.
Ik ga jullie hier de allergrootste boom laten zien, of in ieder geval de allergrootste plankwortels die ik zelf ooit gezien heb. Het is gewoon een muur.
So what I did, I set up a study with 14 forestry concessions to truly replicate the sample of FSC certified sites and non-certified sites. And for that I had to go to the Republic of Congo and Gabon. I set up camera traps in those concessions in very comparable areas of the forest. We left them there for 2 to 3 months and then we recovered them. That gave us a lot of photos. We gathered 1.3 million photos of wildlife in the Congo and Gabon. After spending all that time in the forest and working with over 260 employees to cut paths through the forest, to put up the cameras, to recover them, and then we had to look at all the data, we had these very nice results. We have photos of 55 mammals, well, forest elephants, leopards, chimpanzees, gorillas, all kinds of primates, but also rats, mice, smaller carnivores, all kinds of animals. So we divided the data into weight classes and then you can actually see what the effect was of FSC certified forestry on these different weight classes. Especially the larger species, larger than 10 kilograms on average, are much better off and that effect becomes stronger with even larger species. And the larger species are also happen to be critically endangered. So in a way we can say that FSC certified forestry helps species protection and especially the critically endangered species. So FSC requires companies to implement a certain set of regulations to protect wildlife. They close off old logging roads, very important, because you open up the forest with logging and then you also have to close it off again, so you don't allow hunters to access. And also very important, FSC certified companies also finance anti-poaching patrols. So these patrols go into the forest and they set up checkpoints in roads, for example, to really look for ivory and for ivory poachers. I think the FSC sets an example in good forest management and we show that they are really effective. And actually it's strange to think that other types of forestry that have very negative impacts on wildlife populations are still allowed in the future. So I hope it sets an example for governments around the world also to really require such systems in their tropical forest. Now, the remaining tropical forests are covered for about 25% by logging concessions. So That's an area twice the size of Mexico. As consumers of products that are produced worldwide, we really have an impact in ecosystems on the other side of the globe. And so we have to find ways to reduce those impacts or to have no impact. And I think our study contributes to the knowledge that can help people to make the right decisions, to have a positive impact.
Hey, I think we're back again.
When I used this DIY woodworking method, my friends laughed at.
Now we're back. Thanks a lot, Ali. I hope that was pretty clear that FSC does have some pretty amazing impacts in forests across the world. Like I've kind of picked the most sexier one here of the Congo, but we do have positive impacts across the world, like in forestry, also in Western countries, where we also push the envelope when it comes to the quality of forestry. Obviously, the room for improvement is bigger in certain jurisdictions than it is in the UK, for instance. But when it comes to something like pesticide use, FSC is really pushing the boundaries of regulating that and making sure that we stay as conservative as possible when it comes to the use of pesticides. So now we move on to FSC's integrity work. So one thing that's pivotal to FSC is our social license to operate. So basically, are we trusted by businesses and consumer to deliver an assurance of sustainability? The value of FSC can really be boiled down to the trust in that little label you find in so many products across the world. If trust in that label erodes, then FSC virtually has no value. So one of the ways we're constantly trying to ensure the trust in that label is through our integrity work, to make sure that all the products with an FSC label are from an FSC certified operation, and that you can trust that it's from sustainable forestry. If people start suspecting that there's non-conforming materials diluting or sneaking into FSC supply chains, then we lose the value of the FSC label. It is, like I mentioned, illegal forestry is a huge business. It's sophisticated, it's well resourced. So we are playing a bit of a game of whack-a-mole, where we come up with new integrity measures, and then the fraudsters come up with new ways of trying to fraud us. And their incentives is really driven by being able to access sensitive markets through FSC certification. So if they can launder their products through the FSC system, they stand to be able to access markets they otherwise wouldn't, because consumers trust the FSC label, and in some cases, or in many cases, they also fetch or achieve a price premium, so they can sell their products at a higher price. So today I went through FSC's webpage just to find some of the most recent integrity issues we've been grappling with. You can see them on the left here. So late last year, we launched an investigation into birchwood panels in China and Europe. That's the flow-on effect from kicking Russia and Belarus out of the FSC system, and also European countries either banning Russian timber or making it harder to sell Russian timber on the EU and UK markets. Which has led to a lot of laundering going through China, most of it FSC non-certified, but we also hear whispers that people are laundering Russian birch through FSC certificates. So we've launched an investigation into that. We have integrity risk in African teak supply chains. We've looked at wood pellets in Vietnam. We've been investigating bamboo toilet paper. Recently, middle of last year, we terminated the certificate of a company called Vinda Group we have something called the policy for association, where if you want to be associated with FSC, so either be a member or a certificate holder, you need to meet a range of minimum requirements, one of them not being involved in conversion. And Winder Group was taken over by a serial converter from Southeast Asia, and thereby became associated with conversion and were terminated. One of the things we talk about when we talk about integrity is false claims. So basically, a certificate holder somewhere in the supply chain intentionally or unintentionally or deliberately representing a product as FSC certified when it isn't, and that obviously taints the whole supply chain. So what we do is that when we come across fraud, we terminate these certificates. If the fraud isn't that serious, they can be suspended and eventually get recertified. They might be terminated, so they lose their certificate, or they could be blocked, so they'll never be able to obtain certification again. Examples of fraudulent activities that we come across is like we've seen examples of empty certificates. So basically certificate holders saying that, oh, we haven't sold anything this year, so we don't need to be audited. And we used to have a rule saying, well, if you don't sell anything, then there's no reason for an audit. Then we realized that people were actually selling or claiming products falsely and being FSC certified, but they managed to get out of being audited by saying they weren't selling anything. So we've now closed that loophole in the system, and everyone gets audited even if they claim not to have sold anything. Another more sophisticated type of fraud we see is underestimating the conversion rate. When, for instance, you get a whole tree into a sawmill, you cut that into planks, there's a certain percentage of the tree that's lost, I think cut-offs and sawdust. So if you underestimate the conversion rate, so say you've claimed that 30% of the tree is lost, but in reality it was only 20%. That means that the balance of like from 20 to 30, so those 10% you can introduce non-certified timber there, so you can basically get a little bit of flow of non-certified timber into your supply chain by fudging the conversion rate. So something we have really strict focus on is making sure that those conversion rates are accurate. One of the most common fraudulent approaches we see is basically just fudging invoices. We are relying on invoices like paper trails at the moment, which are susceptible to fraud. I'll talk about how we're trying to prevent that. So a whole range of different ways that people are trying to enter non-conforming materials into FSC supply chains. We do find that it's very rarely, if almost ever, like conspiracies across supply chains. It's usually like individual bad actors somewhere in the supply chain that's engaging in fraudulent activity. So I guess that's the good story here, is that we don't see supply chain wide fraud. It is just like individual rotten apples. So that's some of the challenges we're facing. Luckily, we also have some really good solutions in place, which is, I mean, the good thing is that we're aware of all this fraud and can act on it. The worst thing would be if we thought everything was fine and there's a whole lot of fraud going on that we weren't aware of. So I'm relatively confident we're aware of most of the fraudulent activities and have been able to clamp down on the vast majority of them. Our solutions are pretty wide-ranging. We've heard about the rigorous third-party auditing already with an annual audit. They can be more frequent if there's some kind of evidence that pops up of non-conformity. Then we have the auditing of the auditors by our assurance provider, ASI, to make sure that the auditing stays rigorous. Then we operate with something called transaction verification loops, so TV loops. That's basically a process where ASI, so our assurance provider, troll through invoices from supply chains to ensure that output claims made by a certificate holder are accurate and match the input claims of their trading partners, to make sure that there's no mismatches in volumes across supply chains, which would show that, like, say someone said they they sold 10 tons of whatever, but their client was claiming that they received, or saying that they received 30 tons of that product, and 20 tons appeared out of nowhere, indicating that there's fraudulent activities going on. Just one example, which I alluded to before, from Vietnam, of a TV loop we're carrying out there. ASI asked a total of 424 certificate holders to provide all their sales invoices with FSC claims from 2023, most of them in the chain of custody, but also around 56 forest managers. We were able to terminate 17 certificate holders right away, because they said they weren't interested in taking part in this, which is mandatory, so thus indicating that was probably something they weren't particularly interested in sharing with FSC. And we've done transaction verification loops across the world in different commodities. One of our real success stories is charcoal from Namibia, which was being imported through Ukraine to the European markets. We became aware of some suspicious behavior and did a transaction verification loop in Ukraine and to Namibia of that supply chain. And this was back in the first Trump administration. I don't know if you can remember Paul Manafort, who was a pretty prominent member of the Trump administration. And some of the fraud we discovered in Ukraine actually had ties back to Manafort and the Trump administration. So it just shows you the kind of players we're dealing with. The good thing is that we repeated this transaction verification loop. We found quite a lot of non-conforming materials and fraudulent activity. Repeated the TV loop 2 years later and found 0 issues at all. So I think that shows the impact of these transaction verification loops. Problem here is, as you just mentioned, we do have other integrity solutions as well. We work with wood sample testing, so through isotope, DNA and mass spectrometry analysis, we're able to pinpoint the location that a specific timber product came from, down to almost hundreds of meters. That does rely on us being able to build a library of sample references. So we're working with Royal Botanic Gardens in Kew to use and develop or expand their sample. So that gives us an opportunity if we come across specific products we have concerns with and they're claimed to be from, I don't know, Botswana, and we then sample them and they turn out to be from Samoa, then we again have a pretty strong indication of fraudulent activities. We work increasingly we used to work more randomized, so all our integrity work was randomized, so we would basically just pull out certificate holders from a hat and say, now we're going to investigate these. We work much more risk-based now, so where's the risk? That's where we're going to focus our attention, still with a little bit of flavor of randomization to make sure that people, I guess, in the back of certificate holders' minds, there's always the awareness that ASI and FSC might come and look at their specific supply chain and operations. We have also specifically focused on high-risk species. So we had probably 4 or 5 years ago, it turned out that there was a whole bunch of snowboards with Paulonia, a really light species from, I think it's from Asia, in it, and eventually we found out there's actually no Paulonia sold in the FSC system for years, and there's still none sold. So we've found out that there's certain species where there's quite a lot of fraudulent activity. So now we're keeping track of these species to see if any sales are popping up and immediately investigating. We're also trying to get on the front foot. So 2 recurring realities that emerge from our integrity work is and use of transaction verification loops are firstly that certified organizations themselves, they want timely verification of the certified materials they receive from their trading partners. So some kind of solution to verify in real time, rather than them relying on a paper trail and then knowing that that's going to be verified by an auditor during the annual audit. Also, transaction verification loops are very rigid. You can't change the scope or focus or anything. You get all these invoices, and then if you become aware of a related problem, then you have to start from scratch again by collecting new invoices. So we're looking for solutions that are more real time and also less rigid. And then one key thing is that all the solutions I talked about before are looking at fraudulent activities after the fact. So after it's already occurred and the products have already left the factory, and they might already be in building projects or on people's bookshelves or whatever. What we want to do is to get on the front foot and be more proactive and have this real-time verification of the validity of FSC claims, which is why we're now increasingly working with online solutions in the next generation of our integrity work. This is powered by a solution we call FSC Trace, which is a fancy name for blockchain technology, which does not have anything to do with bitcoins or anything. It is just a very good online solution to weed out any fraudulent activities. So as I mentioned, like many other global supply chains, FSC's supply chains are currently relying on paper documentation, so paper trails of invoices, bills of lading, and so on, and we rely on wet signature stamps for trade paperwork. That is susceptible to falsification and fraudulent claims, so it does create some kind of weakness in the FSC system towards fraudulent activities, which is why we're increasingly trying to move all trade and transfer of claims between certificate holders onto a blockchain, which completely changes the compliance and traceability game. Because here we're dealing with a blockchain that can't be tampered with along the way. We are ensured there's matches between volumes as they're transferred through the system. That verification happens in real time. And we also, like I said, I mentioned that fraud usually can be boiled down to rotten apples in the system. But on a blockchain, you need both parties to verify claims and volumes. So if anyone's trying to fraud the trading partner, the trading partner will notice. And I'll just provide, this is probably a better overview of how FSC Trace works. So you have a supply chain here. So basically, we're trying to get full supply chains onto the blockchain. So every link in the supply chain, there's a transfer on the blockchain of claims. One benefit here is also that this automatically checks against the certificate scope and validity and species. And if you listen carefully when I was talking about the UKTR, you'll recognize that these are some of the due diligence requirements in timber legality legislation. So a benefit of using FSC Trace is that you can actually automate some of the due diligence requirements in legality legislation, and also when it comes into effect, the EU's deforestation regulations. So transactions are matched, making sure that counterparts entries match in volumes. And this also regulates, I talked about the conversion rate here, that's all built into the system. So conversion rates are standardized basically. So if conversion rates are being a little bit suspicious, that'll pop up in the system as well. So, and the data is stored safely, and it can be used to analyze and so on. It's still being piloted, FSC Trace. It hasn't actually been rolled out across the system. We'll be doing that later this year. It will be voluntary to begin with, so there'll be no mandatory requirements for FSC certificate holders to use it. This is, I guess our certificate holders are, at the end of the day, sometimes a little bit conservative and worried about FSC's new solutions. So being practical or like pragmatic, we said, well, we'll show you the virtues of the system, and eventually you'll you'll realize that the many benefits of using it. So it is not mandatory to begin with, but available free of cost, and we're hoping that more and more people will switch to using FSC Trace, and that it'll further bolster our integrity work as part of this process. So getting towards the end of the presentation now, just briefly on how you can find and verify FSC certified suppliers. I'll have to do the impossible and try and stop sharing here, and I think I managed to do that, and then I think you might actually be able to see me now. And then I'll just share a tab here. I think that worked. So I'll go through this pretty briefly. I see we're running out of time. So FSC's helping you guys find FSC certified suppliers and verify them. So say this New Zealand outfit called Abodo is saying we can sell some FSC certified products to you. You can quickly jump onto our webpage, search for Abodo, and you see they are certificate holders from New Zealand, and you can then click on the certificate. So as part of your due diligence when you under the legal login legislation, but also just whenever you order FSC certified products, you want to look up the certificate holder before you place your order. You want to check they have a valid certificate. They could be suspended, terminated, or blocked, which means they won't be able to sell FSC certified products to you. Then you can see a little bit of details about them. They're based in New Zealand. They're certified to our chain of custody standard. You can see that there. Became certified in 2008, which means they've been in the game for a long time, which is good. That gives you an assurance they know what they're doing when it comes to FSC. If you click on the products, you can see all the products that are in the scope of their certificate. So if you're looking for beams, for instance, you're on lock, they can sell that to you. FSC comes in 3 different flavors: FSC recycled, FSC mix, and FSC 100%. I won't go into the details, but if you're looking for FSC 100%, you need to make sure that they can actually sell your solid wood beams or boards with that claim. So if it only said FSC recycled here and you wanted 100%, they wouldn't be able to supply this product. But FSC 100% is usually the most attractive product, so that's pretty good. Here, you also, under the legality legislation and in general, when you order products, want to check that they have the species in scope. So you can see Abodo can provide these products with 2 different species, Douglas fir on the right here and pine on the left. So if you're looking for a product with those 2 species, one of those 2 species, Abodo can sell them to you. You can also look up of like forest managers here. I think we're running out of time, so I won't go through it. But if you look up forest managers, you'll be able to see their audit report. So you can look at everything the auditor looked at, a summary of any non-conformities that were issued. So you can look up every certificate holder in the whole FSC system. You can also, if you don't know a certificate holder, if you just want to find a product, you can specify by product category down here. There's a whole bunch of categories. We had our W52 solid wood boards before. Then we could say we want to find them from New Zealand. We want them from a chain of custody certificate holder, and we want them to be certificate holders. And we want it to be a valid certificate. And then we want the species to be pine. So we can go Pinus radiata, and then you search, and then you'll see all the certificate holders that have this specific species and scope in New Zealand. And Abodo will be there somewhere. If we let go of New Zealand and just look globally, you'll see there's almost 1,300 certificate holders. So you can specify it by the UK, and I think there's around 6. So that shows you how you can search for specific products. So that shows you that the certificate holder you're sourcing from is FSC certified. it doesn't give you an assurance that they actually provide FSC certified products to you. So you also want to do due diligence when you receive the product, basically going through invoices to check that there's an FSC claim. So say you're buying your wooden boards, it has to say FSC 100% mix or recycled, and the invoice needs to have the FSC license code on the invoice as well. We hear anecdotally that many construction sites where they specify FSC certified products, some suppliers actually don't supply FSC certified material, they just send whatever they have in storage. So basically meaning that you're paying potentially a price premium and living up to procurement requirements in your when you place the order, but the product that's delivered to you isn't FSC certified. So always make sure to do your due diligence when you receive FSC certified products. Now I have to see if I can share the other screen again. I think that might be this one. Yeah, so then we have the quiz. So if you're still awake and still there, I will pull up the question now, and I think it was first in gets the book. So be ready. I will show the question in 3, 2, 1, go. So what's the name of FSC's next generation integrity tool? Is the quiz question. So what do we call this new solution that we're working with to improve our integrity work? I can't actually see the chat, but I hope there's some answers in there. And that's really it from me. Thanks a lot for listening.
Okay, thanks, Stefan. Really appreciate that. Thanks for that extensive presentation from both you and Melanie there. We only got a couple of minutes to fire you some questions, so if you could stop sharing your screens and make sure your video's all set up. We've got a bunch of questions, and those who don't get answered will get passed on to Stefan and Melanie. So forgive me if I'm not asking all, because we've got a whole bunch of them. So I'm just going to jump in, and forgive me that I'm not asking yours. We've got a question from Mel. Asking about timber frame construction is growing across Europe and in the UK for individual self-builders and also volume house builders. Are forests and woods currently being replenished at the same rate? And is that even going to be possible in the future when demand grows further? I'll probably fire that over to Stefan, if that's all right.
Yeah, for sure. I think I've answered part of the question already. So it isn't at a global scale, forests aren't being replenished at the rate they're being harvested, unfortunately, which is why we recommend that you source FSC certified products, because that does give you that assurance that the products the forest you're receiving your product from are being replanted. So it is a core requirement in FSC that you must regenerate your forest. There's lots of different ways of harvesting a forest. It can be selective harvesting, it can be clear cut, or whatever. It depends on the forest situation, but a key requirement is that you do regenerate your forest.
Great. Thank you, Stefan. I'm going to fire this question over to Melanie, if that's okay, because it's from Nicola, simply asking, how does the FSC pay for all this?
Oh, good question. Basically, through our certificate holders and that are within the system, and also we have members involved. Our network partners, in which Australia and New Zealand is, and the UK, can also fund its own work in terms of sponsorship, etc. And so there are organisations globally that do receive sponsorship and support as well. But essentially, we're self-funded through our members and through our certificate holders themselves. For example, in Australia, we have our promotional licence holders, which are our bigger retailers, and they actually pay a fee for the use of our logo, etc. So the value of that trust and integrity on our logo is that they pay a fee, an annual fee, for the use of logos.
Wicked. Thank you for that, Melanie. I think I'll jump into Simon's question here. Why is previously certified Russian temperate forestry used sustainably in Europe for centuries, now banned by the IFC. Don't know if that's one for Stefan.
It was an
or Melanie. Thank you. No, jump in, Melanie.
I've lost Stefan.
I can jump in.
Yeah, go for it, Stefan.
Basically because of the war in Ukraine. So FSC was pretty quick out of the blocks when it came to the war in Ukraine and said, well, we can't accept timber from Russia and Belarus until there's a reasonable resolution to the war in Ukraine.
And one more question around... sorry, Stefan.
No, all good.
One more question around for you, Melanie. The 72% in the UK versus the 46% of awareness of the FSC logo and obviously standards and everything. Kind of, why do you think there's such a big discrepancy with the UK and other markets?
I think the FFC UK office must be doing an outstanding job. In Australia, we're actually right at that 46%, and I can only talk for the work that we actually do within Australia. I just think there's been greater reach. FFC UK is an incredible office of incredibly talented staff. They've been around since the inception and just have market penetration. So I think, it's a wonderful thing for people within the UK market, but I'm also happy to hand on Rosie Teasdale, who's the CEO of the FFC UK, and she may be able to go into greater detail about the work, in particularly the communications and marketing that they do to encourage that greater consumer awareness. And we are continuing to repeat those studies that have been done, and they'll be conducted again in 2025 to ensure that we've actually got current and up-to-date information that we can share out on that consumer recognition of FFC.
Wonderful. Thank you for Melanie, and thank you to both of you for giving up your time. It's a very late in the evening there in Australia, as it is here in New Zealand. Really appreciate both your energy and time to share. Any of the questions that you didn't have, if it's okay, we'll just fire them to you. And obviously, Melanie and Stefan can be found online, and I'm sure they'll be happy for you to contact them and vice versa, put you in touch with your local region. And I also got to say that Alex Thean is the winner of the book from Stefan's question as well. So thank you again, Stefan and Melanie. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so very much.
Pleasure. Thank you.
So we've got another speaker up, so we're going to segue straight into that, if that's okay. We have Gareth Davies. Now, this is a pre-record, so therefore there won't be any questions and answers after this. However, if there are any questions, feel free to ask them and we'll pass them over to Gareth as well. And again, if you've got any things that you want to share during the conversation that you're about to hear, the presentation, sorry, you're about to hear, chuck them in the chat so everybody can see. So we have Gareth here, who provides technical advice to clients, specifiers, and colleagues on technical matters containing wood science, coatings, fire retardants, fixings, and more. Gareth recently completed the Level 4 certificate in wood science and timber technology with the highest score in the course history. Wow. Demonstrating his extensive knowledge of timber and the built environment. It's great to have Gareth with us, albeit virtually and in a pre-record. So have a listen and enjoy this one.
Thank you for joining me today for this presentation on exterior timber cladding and choosing sustainable and durable timber. In this presentation, we'll explore the critical importance of selecting appropriately durable timber for exterior conditions. Timber is a beautiful and sustainable material, but to ensure its longevity and performance in demanding outdoor environments, the right selection is essential. Today, I'll cover the benefits of choosing durable species for a long service life, the challenges around grading timber to exclude non-durable sapwood, the importance of sustainable sourcing and its limitations, the role of commercial softwoods, chemical treatments, and environmental considerations, and innovative solutions like thermally modified timber and their benefits. By the end, I hope you'll have a clear understanding of how to approach timber selection for cladding, balancing durability, sustainability, and performance. The importance of selecting durable species. Suitably durable species will ensure a long service life, reducing maintenance and replacement costs for the lifespan of the building. Lifespan considerations. The importance of durability. Let's start with why durability is such a key factor in selecting timber for cladding. Enhanced lifespan. Choosing a suitably durable species directly impacts the lifespan of cladding. Durable timber species such as Siberian larch, western red cedar, and oak are naturally resistant to decay and weathering, reducing the need for frequent maintenance or replacement. In the UK, durability classes of timber are defined on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the most durable and 5 being non-durable. In exterior conditions, timber is exposed to UV, moisture, fungal decay, and pests. Selecting a naturally durable timber means it can perform in these conditions for decades without costly interventions and replacements. For exterior use, durability class 3 is the recommendation for exterior timber. Examples of durability class 3 materials include larch, and more durable materials such as western red cedar and oak can rate as highly as durability class 2. Selecting the right species from the start ensures a long service life, reducing both financial and environmental costs over the building's life cycle. Key issues with durability and grading. Excluding non-durable sapwood is a critical part of grading of timber species. Even when we have selected a suitably durable timber species, we need to consider the presence of sapwood. Sapwood is the portion of the tree at the outermost edge beneath the bark. It transports water and nutrients, and unlike heartwood, sapwood is not durable and is highly susceptible to decay when exposed. Proper grading ensures that sapwood is excluded from exposed cladding faces. Neglecting this step can result in premature decay, even in species that are classified as durable. In this image, you can see Siberian larch cladding, which has been poorly graded, and the exposed sapwood on the boards is now beginning to discolor. These photos were taken only 6 months after installation. More sheltered areas, sapwood is also visible, although because it is a little more sheltered, it has not begun to discolor yet. Over time, this will cause issues. Our recommendation for this project was to replace the affected boards with heartwood graded material. Challenges in grading. Grading timber to exclude sapwood requires expertise and consistent quality control. This process is essential to meet performance expectations, especially in demanding applications. Ensuring the timber you use is properly graded is a key step in achieving a long-lasting cladding system. Sustainable sourcing of timber. Why sustainability matters. With increasing global awareness of climate change and deforestation, responsibly sourced timber is essential for reducing the environmental impact of construction. Timber is a wonderful material. Tree growth sequesters large volumes of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, locking it into the built environment. As it is such a low carbon footprint material, ensuring that it is sustainably sourced is important. Certifications to look out for, such as FSC or PEFC, ensures that the timber comes from responsibly managed forests. Environmental product declarations are increasingly being used by designers and architects to calculate the complete carbon impact of buildings. Having EPDs available for timber cladding products allows building designers and planners to fully understand the impacts of the materials that they're using. Challenges in sustainable sourcing. Homegrown materials. While the UK has a well-developed forestry industry, the number of species grown in this country which are suitable for exterior timber cladding use is relatively limited. High durability materials such as oak are available in limited supply and length, and other materials such as larch are under threat from parasites and diseases. Other major impacts, such as the ongoing war in Ukraine and the embargo on Siberian larch and other Russian timbers, has put strain on European supply chains. And the availability of high durability exotic timbers can be limited. Exotic hardwoods like teak and iroko are naturally durable, but come with sustainability challenges due to overharvesting and restricted supply. Selecting sustainably sourced timber ensures biodiversity is protected and forests are replanted for future use. Sustainability isn't just an ethical consideration, it's also about securing long-term availability and maintaining the integrity of our natural resources. Other key factors in timber cladding performance. Moisture content. Beyond durability and sustainability, critical factors can affect the performance of timber in exterior environments. Moisture content is one of the most important considerations. Timber must be properly dried to a suitable moisture content for exterior use. Improperly dried timber can shrink, swell, warp, or otherwise fail when exposed to changes in humidity, leading to issues in cladding performance. Freshly felled timber can be up to 200% moisture content. This 200% refers to the weight of water contained within the wood relative to the dry weight of the timber. For exterior cladding, the timber should be dried to 16 to 18%. Using timber which is too wet will result in issues with shrinkage in service, causing boards to warp and become potentially unsightly. For internal use, then lower moisture contents are essential, 9% or lower in other environments. Movement and service. Different species responses to moisture and temperature changes. Different species respond differently. For example, Western red cedar can be quite stable, while some more fast-grown softwoods, such as homegrown larch, can be prone to higher movement. Where in the tree the board is cut from is also an important consideration. Flat sawn boards can usually be sourced in wider widths than, for instance, vertical grain quarter sawn boards. Flat sawn boards, however, can be more susceptible to cupping and shrinkage, whereas vertical grain, also known as quarter sawn or radially sawn material, is much more stable. Selecting stable species and ensuring proper moisture content and drying can greatly reduce the risk of movement and warp over time. To give an example, a medium movement class timber would be expected to change approximately 1% of its dimensional width for every 3% change in moisture content. During the summer months, moisture contents in exterior timber cladding can get as low as around 12%, whereas during the winter months, it can range up into the mid-20s. A swing of, for example, 12% seasonally can result in a change of approximately 4% in board width. Commercial softwoods and their limitations. Now let's discuss the role of commercial softwoods and their limitations in exterior applications. Large-scale forestry. Commercial softwoods, such as pine and spruce, are widely available due to large-scale forestry operations and rapid growth. These species are fast-growing and abundant, making them cost-effective and sustainable for many applications. However, softwoods generally have low natural durability classes and are not often suited to exterior use without additional treatment. Chemical preservation treatments. Chemical preservation can be used to enhance the durability performance of timbers for more challenging applications. Low-pressure chemical preservation techniques can be used to enhance the durability of materials such as spruce, making them suitable for use for interior structural work in normally dry conditions, such as studs, framing, joists, and so on. High-pressure impregnation processes can be used to enhance the durability of timbers such as pine, raising their durability to a level where it can be suitable for use in ground contact, such as fence posts, pilings, and so on. Limitations. Chemical preservatives in some species do not penetrate the full section of the timber. This means that ends need to be recoated with preservatives as they are worked on site. And ultimately, once the protective envelope fails over time, then decay can begin to set in. Modern preservatives, while less harmful than older treatments, still pose environmental challenges, especially regarding disposal at the end of the timber's life. For those seeking durability without compromising sustainability, chemical treatments may not always be the ideal solution. This brings us to an exciting alternative: timber modification processes such as thermal modification, which offer sustainable solutions for enhancing durability. We'll now talk about thermal modification, which is a growing, innovative field that enhances durability and stability of fast-growing, sustainable softwoods without chemicals. What is thermal modification? Thermal modification uses heat and steam to alter the wood's chemical structure. This process improves the durability and stability of fast-grown, sustainable softwoods like pine. Process overview. The thermal modification process involves heating the timber in a chamber with steam up to temperatures over 200 degrees Celsius. No chemicals are used, making it an environmentally friendly option. Many manufacturers use renewable energy to power the process, further enhancing sustainability. The thermal modification process causes changes to the timber at a molecular and cellular level. In essence, the process reduces hygroscopicity, meaning that the timber's ability to absorb and retain moisture on the molecular level is reduced. Benefits of thermal modification. Thermal modification offers several key advantages. Timber's durability class is significantly improved, making it suitable for exterior applications. Improved stability. Thermally modified timber has reduced movement, which helps minimize issues like warping and splitting. And better coatings performance. Surface coatings will adhere better and last longer on thermally modified material, reducing maintenance requirements and costs in the long term. At Russwood, we offer two excellent examples of thermally modified timber. Abodo Vulcan, sustainably sourced from New Zealand, made from thermally modified radiata pine. Abodo is renowned for its smooth finish, clear grade, stability, and high performance in harsh conditions. Russwood also offer Luna wood, made from thermally modified Scandinavian pine. These products combine sustainability, durability, and aesthetic appeal, making them ideal choices for exterior cladding. In summary, I hope that today's presentation has been helpful in highlighting the importance of selecting the right timber for cladding to ensure durability, sustainability, and long-term performance. Trade-offs between naturally durable species, chemically treated softwoods, and thermally modified timbers. I hope this presentation has been helpful in highlighting the importance of working with reliable suppliers to select high-quality, well-graded, sustainable timber solutions for your exterior cladding projects.
Great, thank you, Gareth. That's awesome. Now I've got some questions for you. What would you consider to be key areas of knowledge, understanding that architects can accrue to specify timber successfully?
I think there is often a lack of understanding among architects about the qualities of different timber species. We often see age-old timber species such as oak or western red cedar being specified, but without proper understanding of the performance characteristics of those materials, where it may just be a lack of education or awareness of what is out there. Often the stability of the species that is being specified is inappropriate to the use, or the durability of the material may be in question. Mm-hmm. So yeah, just general understanding and increasing awareness of the different timber species that are out there, and not just defaulting to an assumption. Not all timbers are created equal, so that's why we encourage architects to get in touch with us so that we can speak to them and help guide them towards the most appropriate material for their project.
What are some of the biggest challenges facing timber suppliers in the UK at present?
Certainly the ongoing war in Ukraine and the embargo on Russian timber has caused a big impact in Europe. There were, I believe, almost 1 million cubic meters of Siberian larch being exported from Russia prior to the war every year. So that is an enormous volume. Wow. That other materials are now having to come in and fill the gap. So that the ready availability of high grade and good quality material from Russia's forests has been a challenge, but it's one that other producers, both in Europe and further abroad, have stepped up to. While there was a shortage for a number of months soon after the war broke out, things have now established themselves in a fashion that we're not having any issues in supply.
What are the biggest mistakes that are made in the installation process?
Yes, again, lack of education, sometimes at the design level and sometimes with the installers. It's always saddening where a poor installation detail can cause moisture trapping, staining, discoloration, or damage to the timber. This is upsetting for the clients who may have paid large amounts of money from their life savings for their dream home, only to be let down aesthetically because of a poor detailing choice. Again, this is why at Russwood we do a lot of work with architects and outreach work with construction companies, inviting them to come and visit us, drafting up design details and recommendations for how cladding should be fitted to avoid these pitfalls. Sadly, it still happens from time to time. We'll get called to site to investigate an issue, and 99% of the time it is a moisture-related issue due to lack of ventilation, poor drip detailing, or similar.
How can the construction industry change or improve to aid in the continued popularity of sustainable timber in the UK? And how can architects aid in this?
There are several things that could help. The UK construction industry is lagging behind some Central European countries in the use of timber. It is increasingly popular now, but for most of the 20th century, we were primarily building in brick, whereas much of Austria, Switzerland, and so on was still using large volumes of timber. So certainly we are seeing practices improve, and awareness of how to use timber is also getting better. But yes, it's going to take some continued work from all parties, both architects and construction companies, to become familiar and educate themselves with best practices. Russwood work hard to encourage this and promote this, and there are also fields and bodies such as TD UK who exist to educate and promote the use of timber in the built environment.
What is available to ensure the sustainability of products and treatments, like EPDs, for example?
Environmental product declarations are growing in popularity. Russwood created our EPDs 2 years ago across a range of our products, and we see that these are quite popular with specifiers. A lot of questions are being asked now on the sourcing of materials and really looking at some of the processes and the emissions and the energy involved in creating products. So that's really a big strong point, selling point of timber, is that it is such a sustainable material relative to high energy consumption materials, aluminium, steel, concrete, and these sorts of things. So EPDs are a valuable tool, and one that I can see only becoming more and more of a requirement for construction materials going forward.
Wonderful chatting to you, Gareth. We really appreciate you taking the time and to give us more insight into what Russwood do. Fantastic work.
Great, thank you.
And it's thank you from me as well, Gareth. And also you heard Jay there, who you'll found in the chat room and is also looking after you today in terms of the Obodo. Any questions, again, please fire it to her. Any questions of Gareth, she'll kind of curate them up as well and fire them across to Gareth. He's easily found through the website there, and I'm sure he's very open to being contacted if you have any further questions. Leaves me to give you just a little bit of information before I send you away into your day. Our next event, so get your diaries out now. Our next event is coming up perfectly in a month's time. That's in March the 18th, starting again at 10 a.m. GMT. And we'll be focused in on fire retardant timber and the intricacies of testing requirements. You'll get an email from us after this anyway to remind you, but please stick it in your diary now if you can. Our focus today has been on de-risking timber selection, and as you probably heard from our three presenters, there's been a wealth of knowledge, extensive data and insights, and some of you have been kind enough to share how important it has been to listen to these people and also to gather as much information as you can, whether it be on your professional development journeys or stuff that you're just exploring yourselves as well here, or you need a little bit of refresh as well. These people are very open for conversing as a community of people as part of the Obodo CPD series. It's been great to have you with us. We'll hopefully see you in a month's time. It leaves me to thank you for your time, but also thank you, Harley, who has been looking after us in terms of productions, Jay in the chat room there, and also our speakers, Melanie, Stefan, and Gareth. My name's been DK. I'll see you next time on the Obodo CPD series, and take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.